are listening to the 4-7 Podcast, the podcast where two normal guys interview and reminisce about their favorite Christian artists from the 90s and today. All right, guys. As you guys know, I am Mike, and we have RJ here. We are the 4-7 Podcast. You know, as we always say, we're just two normal guys who love music. We love talking about old school Christian music, new music, and everything in between. And today we have a special guest. We have the lead singer of Loyals, Mr. Dane Allen. How you doing, Dane?
Hey, what's up, guys? Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, for sure. I'm super excited to have you on. Again, you're the lead singer of Loyals, also another side project, All Right Years. You're also a writer and a singer for various other bands on Tooth and Nail, and we'll get into that a little later. So super excited for having you on. How's life been these last couple of months? It's been crazy this year.
Very slow and domestic. Just home, working, and doing nothing if I'm not working. It's just, everybody's 2020. It's kind of sounds similar.
Yeah, I hear you. So we're going to talk a little bit about your music, kind of how you got into that, and kind of where you are now and in the coming year. Your self-titled album came out in 2018. But before we go to that, where are you from? How did you get into music in the first place?
So I'm from Tennessee. I was born in Knoxville and moved to Crossville, where no one knows where that is probably, and then moved to Memphis, Tennessee. My dad was a pastor, so he moved us around Tennessee a lot. And then we moved to Lebanon, which is where my family lives now. I got married and moved to Nashville. So that's where I am now.
I got to tell you something. I've always wanted to go to Nashville. I tried convincing my wife, hey, baby, we should go to Nashville for our honeymoon. She's like, that's not romantic. I'm like, listen, we can go ahead, go to different concerts every night. And yeah. I'm like, she's like, that's not romantic to me. I'm like,
dude, Nashville rules. You should totally come on your anniversary.
Oh, I would love it.
It'd be a great trip.
So I actually was introduced to your band in Nashville. I went to the Bad Christian Conference back in 2017, I think it was.
Okay.
And you were playing with Emery, As Cities Burn, Derek Minor, and King's Kaleidoscope.
Yeah, I remember well.
And just to be frank, I didn't know who you were when I went there.
Most people didn't, yeah.
But I was blown away. It was really, really good set. I remember it was a set. I think you guys had some issues audio-wise. I think maybe your guitar wasn't coming through.
Yeah,
and
right.
it still sounded really, really good.
It was Toby Morell's fault, too.
Oh, was it?
You can quote me on that. He needed to use my guitar. I remember it. Because I panicked. I just didn't know what to do. But he needed to use my tuner during their sound check, during Emery's sound check that day. He never plugged it back in. So, we're the first band, right? I'm not going back on the stage after we sound check. We're just, cold, we open the night. So, go in the dark to pick up my guitar. Our intro track is playing. And then the first song starts, and I don't have guitar. And I just panic, don't know what's happening. I don't know why my guitar's not working. Last I played it, it was on. The amp's on, the pedals are on. And then I remember on the last song that Toby needed to use my tuner. And so I plug it in, I had guitar for the last song, but you better believe I made sure he knew it after we played.
Well, I have to admit, I still loved the set. I had not heard those songs before, and I'm into a lot of different kinds of music because obviously you were playing with various genres that night. You had Derek Minor in rap, you had King's Kaleidoscope with an acoustic set, and then you had Emery and As Cities Burns with their more hardcore screamo stuff. And but I thought it fit in really well. And after seeing you live on a bunch of clips on YouTube after that fact, you weren't as happy in this set because of the guitar, but you were you were very good, and your voice was really good, so I liked it. But
dude, it was such a weird night. It was a lot of fun. We were so honored to be able to play that convention because we love Bad Christian, we love Emery. They've taken us out a couple times, but it was so weird because my guitar didn't work and I was just in this haze. I'm like, why is my guitar not working? And then I don't know what, like I said something that like made this girl on the front row like start to heckle me. And she's like,
"Oh, way to go, Dane."
yeah, I know. I don't even remember what I said, to be honest. But she just started heckling me like, everybody, I don't know. She was just giving me a hard time. And I didn't know what to say to it. And it just threw me off the entire night. So I'm so glad that somebody like thought that set was good. That makes me
Well,
feel so
my
better.
wife and I became a fan of you guys that night. So
That's
even
awesome.
at your worst, you made some fans. And I'm sorry for heckling you. That was totally
that was
Oh,
dang it.
I have a really
That's
high
awesome,
voice
man.
when I'm at the show, but anyway, so let's back up a little bit. You're from Tennessee. How did you get into the music scene and actually, starting to play?
My parents were very musical growing up. Like my mom can sing really well. My dad can actually sing really well. But I've always just like grown up listening to music because my parents always had, whatever they were listening to on. I think it was in Memphis. I was like 9 years old, 8 years old, that I really like started loving it and was like, I want to play something, like wasn't old enough to be like, I want to do this for the rest of my life, but knew that I wanted to play. And like I came up on, started really getting interested in like Black gospel music, like a lot of that style, because Memphis is like, that's the thing. Like I was listening to Kirk Franklin and Fred Hammond and that Rance Allen, that kind of stuff all the time. So it really like piqued my interest.
Dane, can I ask you a quick question?
Sure.
Kirk Franklin, I've always been puzzled by this. What does he actually do?
I think he writes. I think he writes and like.
Don't disrespect Kirk Franklin.
He directs the choir. Like he directs like what each part is doing.
Oh,
and
perfect.
Then
Okay.
Like he'll rap or like yell on top of the choir.
See, I could be a Kirk Franklin. I could yell.
I don't know if you could do it as good as Kirk Franklin.
I've been practicing.
Kirk is like the king of being an artist that doesn't sing.
It's kind of like Little John, in a way.
Totally.
You just compared Kirk Franklin to
Little John.
To Little John. But okay, back. Okay, but let's go back. All right, go. All right. Anyway.
So you're getting into music. You mentioned your dad and your mom sing. I think they also you kind of grew up in a church atmosphere too. So I'm gathering that's how you got into some of those bands. But how did the first kind of interaction with playing come about?
So I guess I'll like default to the guitar because I listened to part of that same phase was this artist named Lincoln Brewster. He's like a worship leader now. Oh, like when he put out his first record, like I just kind of fell in love with his guitar playing and didn't really know why. I just like thought it was sick. So I guess then it was like, well, I love this. Maybe I should play guitar. And then my mom like made me promise that I would learn piano first, and because she wanted me to like learn music, not just guitar. So I took a year or two of piano lessons and like whatever I had to do to like be able to start guitar lessons. And then
nice.
Started learning from a youth pastor, like started learning in the church. And I think I was like 13 years old when I started leading worship and singing with a guitar.
Nice. So what were some of yours? You mentioned Kirk Franklin and stuff. Now, as you're playing, what are some of your favorites growing up at the time listening to?
Like early on, it was like those kinds of artists in Memphis. And then when we moved to Lebanon, I kind of got introduced to country music, to like regular, like CCM kind of stuff. Like, I don't know. I was like, loved the more rock side of things.
And what do you say more rock side? Who are you thinking about?
What comes to mind when we first moved to Lebanon was like Hawk Nelson and Sanctus Real and Disciple for sure.
Disciple. I was just listening to Disciple today. Their first 3 records were ridiculous. But
dude,
anyway.
I didn't care. I'm friends with all those guys now. We're like really, really great friends. So this is funny, but I did not care about that band until they released the self-titled record, and that was the one. That was the one that was like, I'm hooked. I'm a Disciple fan.
That was a very, very good album too.
Mm-hmm. Everything else before that was like, I just couldn't care any less about this.
So, just to date you a little bit here, what was the time frame where you were a teenager? Is this like early 2000s, late 90s?
So this would have been, like 2001.
Okay, all right, yeah, because I started getting into a lot of those Christian rock bands like that we've talked about on this podcast. Emery was one of my favorites growing up, still is.
Yeah.
Spoken being another one, which was really good. Tooth and Nail was where I came across, but
same. And it was like later that I just started to discover those bands, because I had a friend who was actually used to be in Loyals. His name's Evan Tone. He introduced me to like Emery, to Anberlin, to a bunch of these artists. And I fell in love. Just like anything that was like screamo or like hardcore, like he introduced me to him, and I just took off with it.
So correct me if I'm wrong. I think your first band was, or one of the first bands, Five Smooth Stones.
You guys have done your homework. Holy moly.
And I think that was the band that transitioned into Loyals later. Am I correct?
No.
Okay. All right. I only did some of my homework.
Although I'm still good friends with all those guys, and they would think that's hilarious. They would love that. But no.
Nice. All right. Well, how'd you get into that? What was that about?
Five Smooth Stones, which is yikes on that band name. But
first of all, where did that band name even come from?
So because we came up in the church, like started learning in youth group for the most part. Just automatically knew, like after we started playing, that I like wanted to be doing that. So we would go and play shows like at churches and stuff on the weekend. And I'm like, I don't know, 15, 16, 17 years old, like in high school, just like going and playing church shows on the weekend for youth groups, for worship conferences, for that kind of thing with this band called Five Smooth Stones. So that's kind of how I like really learned how to play with a band. But then Five Smooth, like everybody graduated, and it just like we realized that it wasn't a real band and moved on. But that's funny that you bring up Five Smooth Stones. I still got a hoodie. I've got a hoodie with Five Smooth Stones on it. I love it.
Nice. So you did music in your teen years a little later. Can you tell us a little bit about the transition to Loyals as it is, or as it was when you got signed to Tooth and Nail? How did that come all about?
Sure. So let's see here, but it might be worth talking about. We were in a band called Skyhook. Skyhook was like the predecessor to Loyals.
Okay.
And it was kind of more of the same, like church kind of stuff, but we did like actual shows at clubs and stuff as well. And I would say that's probably what we wanted to be doing, but I don't know. It just worked out that we played camps and conventions, that kind of thing. But in that era, Tooth and Nail kind of started taking interest in us for their BEC imprint. Their A&R rep, Connor Farley, reached out to us. And for whatever reason, it didn't work. And then we started this new thing called Loyals, because we loved playing clubs and loved playing like not being tied down to like just songs about Jesus. And it kind of like, I don't know why, but Connor reached out like out of nowhere. I was like, what are you guys up to? And we sent him what we were up to. And he was like, yeah, let's sign it. Let's go.
Now, at this time, was it your drummer who left when you guys went to before, in between Skyhook and in between Loyals, you lost a member, correct?
Yeah. He's still one of my best friends in the world. His name's Seth. He was our drummer. Yeah. He bowed out like once we became Loyals, just because, I don't know, he just wasn't into it anymore, which is totally understandable.
Now, you got signed to Tooth and Nail, I think it was 2014?
Oh, man. That's another long story, but I think we signed Tooth. Let's see, when did the record came out in 2018? So yeah. I think we signed a Tooth in 2016.
Okay. Now, when Loyals came about, you're now on Tooth and Nail. I think you mentioned it took, I've seen in the past interview, I think you mentioned it took 3 or 4 years to actually come up with the Loyals self-title album. how was that process? Was this a straight 3 to 4 years, or was this working on the side here and there on it? What was that like?
It's so hard to remember the timeline because so much happened. But I think the first song for Loyals was, well, you're right, I think it was written around 2014. And it was just like birthed out of, it could have even been Skyhook at that point. We were just trying to figure out what we wanted to do next. So we just started writing all these songs. Like, we probably had like 100 songs written before that record came out, like new songs.
Yeah.
That we had never released before. So then the signing comes along and it's like, oh, so this is actually like worth doing. So we did more songs and then got signed, and like there's only so much of it I can talk about, but we had a leaving member, and that caused a lot of problems, and it caused like a freeze on the record being able to release. Like, I think the record was done in 2017, early 2017, maybe late 2016, but due to that leaving member, we couldn't release it until 2018.
Oh, okay. Yeah, a lot's been going on for you in the past 6-7 years. You mentioned before getting married in 2013, and I think that was right before you got signed to Tooth and Nail officially. How has being married changed your perspective of music and life?
Well, your priorities change, obviously. Like, if it's just me living by myself, like with no other responsibilities, like I'm gonna choose music every time, right?
The good old days.
So maybe not even the good old days, but that's what I would have done.
Yeah.
But now, like, I have a family to think about. I now have a child on the way that I have to think about. So it definitely changes priorities as far as like, maybe we won't be able to take a tour where we're getting paid $100, maybe a show where you have to drive, $300 worth of gas to get there. Like, doesn't always equal out, So we'll have to think about that once COVID ends and touring becomes a thing again.
Yeah.
But yeah, it definitely changes things.
How did you meet your wife?
We met when I was 16 years old.
Nice.
At a campground that I was working at, and she was just like a camp attendee. It was like it's a Christian camp.
I thought you were going to say she was my counselor. I was like, oh, man.
No. Nope, nothing like that. But like, we met at that camp, and then later, fast forward, 8-9 years after that, we got married at that same campground.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
that's pretty sweet.
First wedding to ever happen there. Love that.
Very cool.
That's awesome.
Nice. So Loyals came out with the album finally in February 2018. You've mentioned if the album makes you feel something, then we've done our job. What are some of your standouts from that album for yourself? For me, it was Skyline and All Right and Mind Up are ones that I'm listening to quite a bit. But is there one that stands out? It doesn't have to be a favorite because I know that would be hard. But what are some standout songs for you that you really like to play?
Play live. I think probably my favorite right now would be Hold On. And we released a single since the record that's also pretty fun to play. But I think if I had to choose one, it'd be Hold On. That's a lot of fun to play.
Nice. And that single you're talking about, was that one I'm Sorry?
Yeah.
Or okay. Yeah, I just heard that recently. That's a really, really good one too.
Thanks, man.
Yeah. So I was introduced to your band during the Bad Christian Conference in 2017 in Nashville. So I want to talk a little bit about that. How'd you get connected with the Bad Christian Conference and being able to play with, I think that was the return of As Cities Burn.
I think you're probably right. So we had been on the road with Emery, I think, once. Sorry if my dog's barking. Let me let him out. So we've been on the road with Emery for a tour before that conference. I think it ended like maybe just a month before it. And we heard that they were looking for, they were gearing up for that conference, and maybe they had a band drop or something. So we just reached out to them like, hey, we're Bad Christian fans. Obviously, you know us from tour. Like, let us play it. We live in Nashville. And they eventually were like, yeah, let's do it. But yeah, and then nice. As City, like, as though it was the first time I'd seen As Cities play, and that was pretty cool. That was a cool show.
That's cool. Yeah. Now, were you able to be a part? Did you attend any of the actual conference, or was it the concert only for you?
No, it was just the concert.
Nice. Well, I was there for the
day.
Yeah, I was there for the majority of it. I really liked it. I mean, they do some really cool stuff. So it was really cool to see. And then that concert was very all over the place for genres, and I loved it. I loved being able to see, the harder
it's
stuff.
So fun, right?
Yeah.
But like, it makes me think of that Lil Wayne Blink tour that got put together. Like, if you listen to Blink, like you were probably listening to Lil Wayne in that same era. So that show is so cool. Like, it may not be all the same genre, but dude, who cares? If you like all the bands, all the artists that are playing, that's sick.
Yeah, I just went to a concert in February, right before the COVID stuff hit, and it was Spoken headlining, and like 15 bands before Spoken were all screamo bands, and I love screamo, but by the time Spoken was playing, I couldn't even hear them. So I liked being able to hear kind of the rapping, the acoustic stuff, the pop stuff.
Man.
So it was a really cool show.
Awesome.
Nashville. Also, my first time in Nashville. What are your thoughts on Nashville? Living in Nashville, you have any favorite things in Nashville?
I love Nashville. It's pretty much home at this point. I didn't grow up the entire time living near Nashville, but it's where we live now. I honestly, like, outside of like work, I'm not downtown a whole lot. Like, I used to work at TPAC downtown. It was like the Tennessee Performing Arts Center, but then COVID happened, and now I don't work there anymore because there's no shows happening. But like these days, it's just pretty much just stay home after work, and that's a whole other story. But what I love about downtown Nashville is it's not super pretentious most of the time. Like most of the time, you're gonna see a bunch of people just trying to have a good time on Broadway, and like maybe some people that are trying to go out to eat with their family, and like you might see Keith Urban amongst that crowd. Like that's a pretty cool. Like, nobody's like trying super hard to find celebrities or whatever it is. Like people like Keith Urban status can just hang out in downtown and it's fine. I think that's pretty cool.
Yeah, it was nice to be able to walk around and see. So I didn't want to go to Nashville originally because I thought it was just going to be country bars. And when I went, I was really surprised to see the different genres of music in those bars, as we were walking down. And
sure.
And the fact that you could hear music literally from like 11 a.m. until 1 p.m.
It doesn't stop, man. In the season, it doesn't stop. Yeah.
No, but it was a lot of fun. And I did see one celebrity there, Todd Chrisley, who is like some reality star. I remember seeing him there, but that was about it. But
okay, that's cool. You got to see somebody. That's
awesome. So outside of this debut album that you have a lot of credits for writing and singing on other records too. Cutlass on their Alpha Omega album, The Protest, Anthem Lights, Spoken. You did singing on Matthew West and Disciple. Tell us a little bit about how did you get into doing all of these different varying credits here and there?
Well, I mean, probably most of those connections are through like Tooth and Nail or people that I've met along the way, just like doing Loyals or Skyhook. I got a connection mainly with the Disciple guys because they needed a bassist, and I got recommended by a producer friend, and it just happened, and now we're really good friends. But it just takes like A, people knowing what you want to do, and then B, you showing them what you at least you think you're good at, and then being like, yeah, let's do it, let's write a song, or yeah, come sing on my record, or whatever it is. So I think it just kind of naturally progresses more than like I call Matthew West and like, hey, let me sing on your record. It didn't happen like that. I don't think it does happen like that.
What's it like writing for others versus your own band? What are some of the differences you see when you do that?
Well, it's a lot of fun. I've never been really good at only writing one style. I've always like just kind of naturally wanted to write different things. I've never been good at like making a record that sounds like one genre. It's always like a struggle to kind of hone it in to make it sound like one consistent thing. But I think writing for another artist kind of allows you to step outside of what's super important to you and like understand what's super important to them, and then working together to make something that's like outside of yourself. Like if I'm writing for a Loyal song, it's like way more pressure. Like I need to like say exactly what I want to say, and then it has to be a good enough song for that we want to cut it. And if it does get cut, will we ever play it live? And I have to think about like it's just so much to think about, which is fine and it's cool and fun in its own respect. But writing for another artist, it kind of takes that weight off of you, and you're able to just kind of write what the artist wants to write. Like, well, let's say what you want to say. Let's put a song together that's cool that we both love, but I don't have to perform it. Like I don't have to think about all those extra things. It is really fun.
Now, Dane, when you write music for other artists, are you writing the lyrics and the actual tune, or do you guys combine on the lyrics? Or do you guys combine on the? So what is that process?
I would say it's probably different per song, but if like the more the way it usually happens in Nashville, at least, is somebody will reach out on behalf of a band, or an artist will reach out and say, "Hey, look, I need songs. I need to cut songs. Like, let's write, because I need more to pick from." And so we'll, set up a day, and right now looks more like a Skype session, but or we'll meet in person and take a few hours to finish the song, and then it'll get demoed, and then maybe they'll cut it.
Nice.
So one of those things that you ended up doing was a Christmas medley with Josiah Prince. So up until I heard that video, which I just heard it about a month ago, because of our interview with Josiah, Copeland has a "Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas" song that is my favorite. I play it every year. You have taken the place of my top Christmas song of all time.
Yes.
So it is,
Copeland.
It is so good.
Eat it.
It is so good. It is so good. I loved it. And then from there, you guys ended up doing a full-length album with the name All Right Years. How did that come about? That style, to me, isn't a stretch for you at all, but it definitely was a new sound. How did that come about?
Well, me and Josie are just good friends and like making music together. So we have another friend who works for a company called Soundstripe. And his name's Matt Arcani. He's produced a lot of the Loyal stuff. He produced that first record. But he works for Soundstripe. And he presented Josie, I think, the idea of like doing a pop punk record. And I've sang on a lot of the Disciple stuff on like the last record, and Long Live the Rebels. So like I don't know, like Josie just heard me sing before. So he reached out to me like, "Hey, would you want to sing this stuff?" So we did a record together. And it was a lot of fun. Like probably some of the most fun I've ever had working on music.
Nice.
It was just like another situation of like, there was no pressure. Like we were just having fun. Like I knew exactly how I was going to sing each day. It was just belt it as hard as possible. And I was so nervous like at first, because I don't sing like that anymore. Like it's been so long since I've scream singed or like done like rock vocals as like a lead voice. And so we had the first song like queued up, and I was like, "Josie, like you have to tell me if this sucks, because I'm just gonna go for it. And if it sucks, let me know and I'll change whatever I need to change." But it was like one take, like went for it, and Josie's like, "Oh yeah, that rules." It was like, all right, that's how we're doing the whole record. And it was so fun, man. It was so fast. I think we did the whole record in 2 weeks.
Oh wow, nice. Yeah, it seems to be doing really well on Spotify. I was just on there today, and it's a good album. I really like it. And again,
Thanks, man.
It's not too big of a stretch for you. Maybe more on his end if you know him from Disciple. But it was a really cool album. He told us a little bit about his thoughts on the podcast too. So that was really cool. Other than that, it's been a quiet year on social media, at least, maybe not in your life, but on social media. But you guys still have over 700,000 streams on Spotify for the Loyals album. It's doing a lot, and I'm listening to it more and more this year. Maybe I'm listening to more music this year just because I'm at home so much. But anything else happened this year outside of that? I know Loyals kind of came back on the social media scene in about June or so, and you guys have been pretty frequent since then.
Yeah.
Why was what was the silence on social media? Were you guys trying to figure things out? Were you guys?
So man, there's a lot that happened. Maybe it wasn't a lot. We just had to deal with a lot. We had to work through a lot. So I think it was 2018, 2019. Man, it had to have been 2018. We lost our best friend and tour manager, and so he was like one of those people that I've grown up with since I was a kid. And
do you mean pass away or?
Yeah, he took his own life.
Ooh, I'm sorry to hear that.
It was like one of those situations that like rocked all of us, like band, friend group, immediate friend group, family. Like it was rough. So it was just so much. Like there was no doing anything after that happened. I think we did a couple tours, and like that year. And that was pretty much all we could handle. Like, the anxiety through the roof, like just a lot to mentally deal with. So that's probably why we went away for so long, like on socials. Like it just wasn't important because we were at home dealing with, man, our friend just died. Like he's not, like we don't have a tour manager anymore. You know what I mean? Like there's so much to wade through. And yeah, it's like, I think June-ish, like you said, last year, that we kind of started getting near completion on some new music for Loyals. Like I've been writing ever since we put out the first record, but as far as like working with a producer on new stuff, you know, that's starting to happen. Like was starting to happen at that point last year. So that's probably the reason for the media blackout from us.
No, Dane, I remember before we came on, I remember we were talking about your faith and things of that nature. You don't have to go into it too deep, but just wanted to kind of ask you a question. Your best friend was taken from this earth. Did that start or have a role into where you are today with your faith? Because I was thinking when we started doing this, like, you remember you saying that you were a pastor's kid. You were in Tennessee. You were in the Bible Belt. You grew up listening to Christian music. You considered yourself a Christian for a long time. And then when we were talking about the music, and you said, well, it's really complicated to say for a Christian band. Did this mindset start about your faith or when you lost your friend?
Yeah, so like Loyals just kind of came out of the gate knowing that we didn't want to be put into this hole, right? Like you hear it all the time. Like a band doesn't want to be just a Christian band. We just want to make music. We wanted to have that set up from the get-go. So we knew we were on tooth and nail, so we'd have questions, and that's fine. But like we didn't want to like ever be the band that was just playing youth groups every night. Because it doesn't feel very real. So that from the get-go was the stance. But then unrelated, like to answer your question, of course, like Weston's death it rocked me personally as far as what I thought about God, what I thought about how much he cares. And it's a lot to deal with, a lot of questions to deal with that I had never asked myself before. And so standing here like 2.5 years later, it's come down a long road with that. A lot of therapy, a lot of, I guess you could say like Christian therapy, a lot of just regular therapy, and like trying to wade through those answers to get to a better place. But yeah, if that ever happens, like it definitely brings up some questions.
Yeah, I'm glad that you brought up therapy and all of that deal. I mean, it's not normalized in a lot of circles, especially in the church. I've gone myself. I go, as late as last year. It's super important, in a normal basis, never mind going through what you had gone through, with the death of a friend, so close. So that's good to hear.
Yeah, man, I can honestly say, like, I'm in a way better place now. And you asked me before we started the interview, like, would you consider yourself a Christian? And I would say at this point, no. If you like made me answer the question, then it's no. But I have hope, and like I recognize that I don't like having to say that.
Yeah.
Like, I don't want to have to say no. But if I'm being honest, like I always grew up like, don't take communion unless you know you're right with God, right?
Yeah.
I don't even know like the theological accuracy of that, whatever. I don't really care. But I do want to be honest. Like, I don't want to say like, well, like I want to be, but I don't know. Like, if you made me answer this, no. But I want to be in a better place with God. I think I know that he's real. It's just a matter of when Weston died, it made me wonder if I liked God.
Yeah.
It made me wonder if I like what he's all about.
So I guess the question is, are you at the point now where you're open to that? You believe in God, but are you open to finding out more of, I don't want to say if he's real or not, because you just said you think he's real, but are you open to the fact of the more of rebuilding a relationship with God in time?
Yeah, and I've been trying to do that.
Yeah.
It's been a lot of different processes for me, like, to get to this place today. But I think you can focus on a problem. Well, let's relate it to songs, because it really rings true with the song analogy for me. You can sit and like be stumped on a line in a song for hours and never be able to get something good. Sometimes it takes just like walking out of the room, forgetting about it, and then coming back and I've got it. Aha.
Yeah.
So there's been a lot of focus on why can't I just get over this? Why can't I reconcile what happened with my best friend with my relationship with God? And there's so many like points that have been made, like people talking with me, like taking time out of their day to just sit with me and be like, all right, let's go through your questions. Like, I want to help you. It's been so many of those conversations to lead me to where I'm now. And so much focused time on that question of, I'm stumped on this line. I'm stumped on this. How do I get past this? I kind of like got to a point. I was meeting with my like longtime pastor and mentor and friend, and we were just working on it like every week, right? And it got to a point where it was like, man, I don't know how much this is helping anymore. I feel like I just need to go away from it and then like forget about it, kind of focus on something else, and then come back to the conversation. And I feel like that's where I'm getting back to now at this point in time in 2021.
I give you credit, and I'll tell you this. Most Christians are not honest. Most Christians will believe in something without actually believing in it. They use it more as a badge on their chest. And I think I'm using my words carefully here because I don't want to misrepresent what I'm saying.
Sure.
I believe God allows us to go through things for a specific reasons. I'm thinking of James chapter 1. But I also understand that sometimes we need to go through the valleys to really get to almost like the promised land, quote unquote. And I think what you're going through is it's extremely difficult. And I commend you, actually, and I mean this in a respectful way. Most people give up.
Sure.
But you're really trying to find what the answer It is. And God is not sometimes trying to find the answer to what God's trying to give you is not like me asking you a question, you just responding. It is a gut-wrenching, heartbreaking confusion sometimes. And I give you credit. I think it's awesome that you're not calling yourself a Christian, but you're like, you know something? I really believe in God. I'm trying to find the answer. And at the end of this, I'm hoping I get an answer.
Yeah, totally. That's where I'm at. Like, God has always been such a big part of my life. Like, ever since I was born, you know what I mean? Like, Dad was a pastor from the moment I was born to now. Like, he still preaches at churches, but it's one thing to grow up in that and like just like let that be your safety net. And this is my network of people that are all in church, and I don't ever have to really think about it. It's just always there.
Yeah.
Like now I have something that I have to process. Mm-hmm. Something that I don't like about God. Like, God, you let this, like that's the whole thing for me is like, God, why did you let Weston kill himself? Mm-hmm. Why did you let him do it? This is somebody who has served you, is like served in the church with alongside me for you. And like, you just let him get to a point where he's, you know, he thought that was a good idea. And mm-hmm. That's been the question for years for me, right? And it never really mattered. It doesn't matter to somebody that's hurting like that, somebody who's feeling that pain, that anger, that denial, whatever it is. Like, you can give them all the logical explanations you want, but it doesn't really matter. Like, I wasn't going to hear it. So that's what I mean when, like, I just kind of had to take a step back and be like, I'm hearing logic. I recognize that. I believe in God. I even believe that God healed me when I was a kid. Mm-hmm. I had a tumor in my wrist and it miraculously disappeared. I still believe that God did that to this day. I don't know why, but he did it. And so it hurts me when I see a friend that's suffering so bad that he thinks he's got to end it. It hurts me to think that, okay, God, you've saved me. Like, what the hell? Yeah. Like, what's the difference? And then not getting an answer for that is just infuriating.
Yeah.
So it's been a process of like trying to seek wisdom on that, trying to seek logic on that. And it's been really good. But at the same time, I'm stumped on it, or I have been stumped on it. So I just need to take the time to step away for a second.
Has going through this affected your relationships?
Oh, yeah. Big time. Every relationship. Yeah. Absolutely.
Because I always think about this because it's not uncommon, and I find a lot of Christian artists. I think of Mike Herrera from MXPX. I think of other. I can't think off the head, but there's a bunch of people I've known of or have talked to, and they also have walked away. And I've always wondered, how is their relationships? Like, how does it affect? Like, if you're married and in that marriage, you said, I love Jesus, we're going to get married. And all of a sudden you're like, honey, I don't know if I'm a Christian anymore. Like,
yeah,
that's going to be a challenge.
Yeah, it totally is. I mean, it's definitely something that me and Emily have had to walk through together. And just to commend Emily, she's been so great about it. Mm-hmm. Definitely like worried, definitely like concerned for me, but also giving me the space to like figure it out. Awesome. She's been really great about that. And honestly, so many of my friends have been great about that.
To be honest, this is where you find out who your true friends are.
Mm-hmm. Well, I consider myself lucky. I've got a lot of really, really great friends. People that see me be person and like will call me out on it, but will also love me through it. Hmm. And I just feel really lucky to have those people around me.
Yeah.
I think keeping open the dialogue is really the way to go. And I think I'm really happy that it seems as though our generation has really allowed for that. I grew up in the church too, and you didn't talk about those things when I was a teenager. You didn't talk about those things even when I was in my 20s. But I have friends too that we can talk about those things. We can talk about doubts. We can talk about what's going on in 2020 and what's going on in our country. And so it's really cool that I think if you can keep that dialogue going, it's always going to be healthy and refreshing. But
I think the biggest problem, I was going to make this right now because you just said it. I think the biggest problem with our church right now is they're more willing to talk about politics on Facebook rather than talk about what's really going on in their own lives. You know what I mean?
Well, I think it's pretty telling in a lot of cases what's going on in their lives.
Yeah, because so many, like, my biggest thing with the church is the church always puts on a front, like, where we have it all together. But I was just talking to my pastor the other day. Is like, we're a church. The church is a place full of broken people who don't have it together, and sometimes they're the worst of the worst. And until we get real, like you're doing, we're never going to figure it out.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that has been kind of freeing about the whole experience. I work at a church as a tech director. I was a worship leader, like music director, but I kind of stepped away from that just to handle through this whole thing, like handle just the AV side of things. Because it was pretty painful to like sing worship songs to God when I was having this, having trouble with God in general. But my church has been so cool to like, and that's part of the relationships I'm talking about. Like my pastor and good friend for so many years, since I was 12 years old, being able to hear me say what I'm saying to you and like give me the space that I need to process it, and like being willing to meet with me and talk about it. And like, it takes so much from somebody willing to do that.
Wow.
It would be really easy for my friend to like fire me. Oh, you don't love God. Bye. But he didn't do that. He gave me the space, and it's still giving me the space to figure it out. And he's helping me. And I think that's really cool. Now, as far as like pointing the finger at everybody on social media or whatever it is, yeah, you're absolutely right. The church is full of broken people. Mm-hmm. I feel like I'm one of them. And it's been really freeing to like step away from that, take a step back, and be like, I don't have to worry about putting on a face anymore. Like everybody knows what I'm dealing with. So why would I try to hide it? Why would I try to smile at you if I don't feel like smiling at you? Why would I try to like say, well, have a good day, brother? Like, I remember like right after Weston died, there was a situation at a church where I was like leading worship and I broke down and like was like crying on stage and could not continue. Like I couldn't get through the set, right? And then I had somebody come up to me at that church and they were like, I really loved your brokenness. I really loved like how you let the Spirit move through you on stage. And I totally understand that response. I grew up in Pentecostal church and I've seen a lot of crazy stuff. So that question or that like comment doesn't bother me. But when I said to that person, man, I appreciate that. That's not what happened. Like that, what you saw was not that. I'm dealing with this. And that person, I'm trying to be very vague about who it was or where it was at. But that person looked at me like offended that I would like contradict the blessing that they thought they were giving me. I was like, dude, I'm just trying to be real with you. Like, what, you're mad? Are you kidding me? See, and that's the kind of thing that I think we've got to get over.
That makes me shake my head because so many times there's a verse in the Bible I tell my kid, it's literally my favorite verse. It says, for Christ did not come to be served, but to serve and give his life as a ransom for many. So many people in the church are just waiting to serve themselves. Like that person was wanting to serve themselves because they wanted to be gratified by what they thought or perceived your brokenness from. And as soon as you say, well, that's not the reason, it's almost like, okay, I can't be served, I'm out. Like, we need to be, as a church, DC Talk. I'm gonna break this down. They said it best in one of their songs. The biggest cause of atheism today is Christians.
Dude, bring it. That's great.
You know what I mean? Christians really need to understand it's not about us. It's about serving other people. And if we're only trying to get something out of it for us, we miss the whole mark of who Jesus actually is.
Yeah. And like to be fair, like that person was coming to me in a really hard time, and I probably didn't respond in the best way. So I want, the more I see people in our current political situation, like the more I see people like on radical left, radical right, whatever it is, freaking out on other people because of something that they don't like the more I do get aggravated at that. I do get aggravated when I see something that I don't agree with, sure. But at the same time, I know, man, there was a time when I was a really irrational person because of something that had happened. I don't want to ever be the guy that points the finger at somebody else and says, you're stupid because I don't like what you're saying, or you're not a good person because I don't like what you're saying. I am the bad person. I am the person that was irrational in a time that nobody understood. So it's hard for me to look at the guy that came up to me after that church service now and be like, I don't like, I have to forgive him. You know what I mean? And that's hard. And it was for sure hard at the time, but you know, I just, my thinking now is like, of course he reacted that way. And there's 100 other examples of where I reacted poorly to somebody else.
For a person who doesn't consider himself a Christian right now, that's probably the most Christian thing I've heard in a long time.
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's great that we're talking about.
I think that was an awesome response. I love that response.
Yeah, I think it's great that we're talking about how, you know, you're still have that open dialogue and you still have those friends and that church to support you through your questioning and your doubting or your kind of thinking about those things that you may not have thought about in the past. So I think that's a really positive thing. So.
Well, and like I said, it's an ongoing venture, right? Like I'm not where I want to be, or not in a place where like I feel like I'm good, but I'm definitely in a better place now than I was 2 years ago. Definitely a happier place. I was talking with my wife about that the other day. Like it's so many crazy things are happening in our world right now, and there's a lot to be sad about, and I am sad about those things. But me as a person, like, it almost sounds selfish to say because there are so many bad things happening, but me as a person, way happier. Like, I can only say that maybe that's God. I don't know. It's a lot of time for sure to deal with, but I feel like I'm in a healthier place for sure these days. Nice. And it's worth like getting healthier.
For sure. It's sorry, Mike.
I want to ask a question. So, how does this mindset or place that you've come, how does it affect does it affect your record deal with Tooth and Nail? Does it play into it at all, or?
How do you mean?
RJ and I were talking earlier. Does Tooth and Nail, like, do they have, like, I know some labels that are very, very Christian. They have various policies where you have to be Christian and this and this and this, like.
No, as far as I know.
Good. That's awesome.
He finds out tonight.
Yeah, Tooth and Nail has been, you know, I don't know that they've ever like talked about us as like a faith thing. I don't know if that's ever been a conversation. I know plenty of Tooth and Nail artists that wouldn't call themselves Christian, like as an entity or whatever. But yeah, the short answer, no.
Nice.
But anyways, I mean, it's been a crazy 2 or 3 years to say the least for you, and I think for everyone in 2020. You're back now over the summer, and you had mentioned it's down to just you and Andrew, right?
Yeah, we're a duo, and like on tour we have a band, but as far as who's writing and producing the songs and making them happen, it's just me and Gomi.
Nice. So with that being said, and going into 2021, what are your hopes for 2021? Do you have any plans for an upcoming album or a tour? What are you hoping to see in 2021?
I wish I had something to say, but honestly, everybody's just kind of like waiting for touring to come back. We do expect to release music this year. I don't. Nice. Even that is like drastically slowed down by COVID, or at least it was in 2020. It's hard to get people in a room together when there's a pandemic happening. But
yeah.
You know, we're doing our best to get music out. We have songs that are done and like in the final stages of being released, but we don't have a date yet.
Nice. Well, that's good to hear. And I think we talked about this prior. You're coming into a new year with a new addition to.
That's right. Yeah. Having a baby boy, Wyatt Cooper Allen.
Very cool. Very congratulations. March is a great month. I was born on St. Patrick's Day, and I'm having a baby in March as well. So
that's awesome, man. Congratulations to you.
Thank you. It definitely changes things. As he said before, I'm on number 4 coming up in March. So it's a bit much, but yeah, it's don't let anyone fool you. It's after 1, it just gets crazier. Like it's but 2, 3, 4. To me, it's all the same. 2, 3, 4. They're all crazy running around.
I honestly can't wait, man. We're both so excited to have him here.
That's great. And it's a good year. It's going to be a good year. I don't think we have too much more that we wanted to cover. We're reaching that hour mark like we normally do on our podcast. I do have to say a shout out from Matt from Spoken. He just hit me up. He said he loves you and wanted to let you know from Texas that he was listening in. So
this is Matt from Spoken?
Yes. Mm-hmm.
In Texas. Is he on the road right now?
He is driving home from Texas currently right now.
Oh, okay.
Yep, he is headed back home.
I actually played with Spoken for a little short leg of a tour once, and it was a blast.
Oh, nice. That was one of my first entries into like Christian rock that I didn't know you could scream Jesus' name until he came around.
And he has a voice like no one else.
His voice is my favorite of all time. He was actually our first podcast.
Yeah.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah, Matt's great.
Yeah, he's a cool dude. Well, hey, again, thank you for joining us today. Thank you for being honest and real. This is a podcast where not only we talk about music and tooth and nail bands and things like that, but we also talk a little bit about faith, no matter where it is. So I really thank you for being open and honest with that. I know that's going to help a ton of people who may listen to the podcast because we're all dealing with, I think, a little bit of that throughout this past year or two, for sure. I know a ton of people, that are dealing with certain things like that too. So I appreciate it. And I'm looking forward to hearing that new music from you.
Thanks, man. And thank you guys again for having me on. It was a blast. Like I said, it's just a lot of fun to be able to talk about music in a year that like haven't had that much music happening. Thank you again.
Yeah. Well, hey, if you don't mind staying on after we end the broadcast, but otherwise, thank you again for coming on. This is Dane Allen from Loyals and All Right Ears. So check them both out on Spotify. And we thank you for joining us on the 4-7 podcast.
All right. Thanks, guys. Have a good one.
See ya.
See ya.